Dr. Walton, you heard the question, is Christian education good for everyone? So I'm going to ask you, is it? What's your answer to that question?
My answer to that question is a qualified yes. There's a lot of debate about this in Christian education, and it's mostly centered on two issues. The first of those is the evangelism discipleship issue. Should a Christian school focus on evangelism, which would mean it's for everyone, or on discipleship, which would mean it's limited somewhat to children who are believers? And my answer to that is, well, should the church be focused on evangelism or discipleship? And the answer is yes. In AACS, there are successful schools that take both approaches. But the most common and most often successful model is a more open enrollment evangelistic approach in lower elementary and elementary school, and then a more focused or exclusive focus on discipleship of Christian students in upper school. So, yes, it's for everyone. The second issue in that is usually a discussion about children with exceptional needs. And that's a difficult issue because kids with exceptional needs require exceptional resources, additional resources. But I fundamentally believe that we should be partnering with parents to meet the needs of these kids. We did so in the school that I was administrator of. In AACS, I see a growing number of schools finding the resources, developing their people professionally to meet the needs of kids with exceptional needs. In the AACS, we're doing summer professional development on serving kids with special needs. Did a course this summer on serving kids with dyslexia, serving kids with reading difficulties. So not everyone would agree wholeheartedly with my positions on those, but yes, Christian education is for everyone, both an evangelistic and a discipleship effort, and meeting the needs of all kids, even those with exceptional needs.
Jeff, that is great. Now, a part of the Christian education scene is the homeschool movement. How does it fit in? We often have families in our churches that are involved in homeschooling for various reasons. How does it fit into the whole process of Christian education?
Parents are a child's first teachers. Children are given in stewardship to parents. The Christian school has authority only as delegated by parents and or a church. So homeschooling can be an effective way of doing Christian education. Most of our Christian schools partner with homeschool families in an umbrella program or a program that allows homeschool families to participate in some of the programs of the school. AACS rents office space and partners with HSLDA, Homeschool Legal Defense in Washington. And so as a form of Christian education, homeschooling, I think, is philosophically and biblically an option. I think in our churches we ought to see homeschooling partnering with Christian schools for the education of children so that they're working together in an entire ministry.
Keith, explain what you mean by that the homeschooling partnering with the churches or schools in education. And the reason why I ask you that is just the other day I was talking to a family in the church that I pastor. They homeschool, and they say it's a very, very difficult thing to do, both from the perspective of the parents and the perspective of the students. So when you talk about partnership, please explain that a little bit more detailed to our audience, if you would, please.
Well, the homeschooling sometimes reaches a challenge with our young people. They look more for some of the social interaction that they experience in a more traditional classroom because education is more than just academic content. Education is learning how to live. It's learning how to apply God's principles and getting along with other people. Sometimes the parents are looking for extracurricular activities, and many times we're finding in AACS that many times a church and a school within that church can work together in partnership. So homeschool students maybe take a couple of classes as a part of the student body. then they can participate in some of the extracurricular activities, get some of the benefits of having other teachers that are having an influence on their life. So I think the partnership of it becomes very important, and particularly as students progress upward to the upper grades, parents find it more challenging to homeschool them than when they were just in the lower elementary grades. And they are also looking for, therefore, the kind of faculty help that can help them with the science and the upper level English and mathematics and some of those areas.
That's an excellent answer, Keith. Jeff, is there anything you'd like to add to that since you initially brought it up?
I think Keith has answered that well. The homeschool movement is sometimes seen as oppositional in some ways to Christian schooling. And that becomes as Christian schools face declining enrollment in some cases, those questions naturally arise. There are states where the number of students now homeschooling exceeds the number of students in private schools. So homeschooling is a continuing and very significant movement. It's really important that philosophically and biblically we understand that parents are a child's first teachers and children are given in stewardship to parents. There are real challenges with homeschooling, and Christian schools and churches ought to partner with parents in helping to meet some of those challenges. Just a note and a caution on those challenges. Parents who choose to homeschool should evaluate whether the parents have the academic knowledge, the character, the discipline, and the commitment to homeschool. I regularly interview Christian school administrators who all say something like this: a fourth to a third of the homeschool students who transfer into their school are abysmally behind grade level, and that's indefensible. So we do support and partner with parents who homeschool, believe that churches ought to do so, but caution parents to make sure that they are committed and fit for the task they're taking on.
Jeff, I can hear some people saying, we're not sending our children to Christian school or even homeschooling them because there simply isn't anything available where we live. So is sending that child to a public school a viable option? What about online kind of possibilities? Are those viable as an alternative with Christian education?
I would not presume the authority or the wisdom to answer that question for a parent. Children are given in stewardship to parents. Interesting quote from Elizabeth Stone, who said, "Making the decision to have a child is momentous. It is deciding forever to have your heart go walking around outside your body." And so I would say to that parent in that circumstance, you have to answer this question: how will I make sure my child receives a Christian education? Because that's not optional. Then if I choose a secular school, how will I make sure my child receives a Christian education? How will I meet the obligations of Deuteronomy 6, verses 6 and 7, and Ephesians 6:4? Secular education is not a choice that I would make with a good conscience, but I don't presume to make that choice for other parents. I would explore, in those circumstances, some of the really good Christian online options, and personally, I might move or change jobs.
That's an interesting thing. I often say to people, when you move to another location, make sure you find a good, solid church with a good, solid Christian school before you make that move. And so, Jeff, I appreciate you bringing that up. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot of information right here that Jeff is bringing to you. If you have any questions to ask him, you can do so by sending him an email at info@aacs.org. That's info@aacs.org.